By the way, if you don't mind me asking, I think it's helpful for entrepreneurs that have an idea that haven't been able to find the right technical co-founder or the right tech talent overseas. How did you find your technical co-founder? How did you guys then recruit overseas? What platform did you use to find talent?
It's exclusive to finding workers in the Philippines. I think it's like .ph hire or something.
Online job.
There we go.
Online
You got it.
.ph. Yeah.
You got it. That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
So we used that one, but then we also used Upwork because I was really wanting to find, I had heard that different countries have different talent for whatever reason. Sometimes some countries tend to produce better back-end developers or front-end developers. And from what I found, the Philippines is fantastic for design. So UX, front-end.
Startups with Stu is a podcast for anyone living or wanting to live the startup life, either as a founder or a team member. Your host, Stuart Draper, was a 9-time Inc. 5000 honoree before age 40. This show dives deep into the exhilarating world of entrepreneurship with guests that are seeking advice from Stu for their startup or business owners that want to share their entrepreneurial journey. Listeners always walk away with actionable ideas of what to do to take their startup to the moon. Startup life can feel like a roller coaster ride. And with Startups with Stu, you're likely to turn your roller coaster ride into a rocket ship ride. Get ready to uncover the secrets to startup success from visionary founders and savvy investors who've transformed groundbreaking ideas into thriving ventures.
This episode is brought to you today by PodUp. PodUp.com is the leading all-in-one AI-powered podcasting software. If you've ever considered having a podcast, want to get started, go to podup.com and check it out. I produce my podcast, use a variety of tools and producers that help me get everything done that I'm doing. Podallies.com is the agency I choose. If you're interested in having a podcast, you don't want to do it yourself through podup.com, I highly recommend that you go check out podallies.com and schedule a strategy call with one of their production specialists. They will be able to help you and think through everything you need to before you get started on your journey as a podcaster. Today we have with us Mr. Jared Nygren, the founder of Apruv. Jared, so good to be with you today.
Yes, great to be with you, Stu. Thanks for having me on.
So Jared, tell us about Apruv. What is that?
Yes. So Apruv is a customer retention platform built for home service companies. So we're focused on increasing customer lifetime value and improving staff performance. And we do that really through three main areas. So one is we help these companies nail the onboarding with an AI contract verification tool that audio and video records the customer agreeing to the terms. And then we help their service teams over deliver during the service by helping them leaderboard their service techs with key KPIs and things that actually matter. And then we help close the feedback loop. So by letting customers rate and financially reward performance.
Wow, awesome. So who's the ideal customer today?
So right now we're 100% focused on pest control companies, but we believe we can expand across lots of different home service verticals, but because we're very integration focused, where we integrate and lay on top of CRMs and ERP systems, we're trying to stay nimble and just attack one vertical at a time.
Cool. How long have you been in the entrepreneurship game so far?
Yeah, so it's been, about probably coming up on three and a half years.
What's the traction been like so far? If you're doing it that long, that's because something's working out.
Yes. Well, it's a little bit twofold. So I jumped into the entrepreneurial game with a company called Market Surge, which was like a micro SaaS. It was built on top of a white label operating system, so kind of low code. And I built that for about 2 years. And then I had an exit where I sold that company and I jumped into Apruv. And so I've been working on Apruv for about a year. And this one's fully coded, right? So it's taken a little bit more time to build the product for us to start selling it. But we've done 130K in our first year, got the product built. It's a scrappy version, right? So we're going back and making up for all the tech debt that we have and building a product that's a little more scalable in terms of being able to onboard without having to do a bunch of manual stuff.
Yeah. Okay. For those listening that might be new to the game of software entrepreneurship, tech debt is where you build a first version fast without a lot of quality assurance in place, and you don't know what is going to be built that will work forever or only work for a little while. And you don't know how well it will scale to be able to support multiple users, or if it's only going to work well for one user or user type. And so you move forward, though, because you need to generate some revenue off of the first version, even if it's not perfect. And at some point, if you're going to scale and get more customers and meet their needs, you have to address the technical debt that you build up. And that means paying for it by having to reinvest in the software that you built and paid for already.
That sounds about right. That's a textbook definition there. I love it.
It's no fun to have tech debt because you're like, no, I already paid to have this built. Why didn't you build it right for me the first time? Are you a technical founder where you're actually the one doing the engineering, or do you pay a team for that?
No, I did bring on a co-founder for this. So he built the original version, and then we've hired an overseas team that we just individually, interviewed a bunch of candidates, and we found a really solid front end guy, back end, and then we have a UX UI girl that she does just a phenomenal job. So I kind of lead the product vision, and I work with the UX team to craft where we're headed, and then we feed that to the development team.
By the way, if you don't mind me asking, I think it's helpful for entrepreneurs that have an idea that haven't been able to find the right technical co-founder or the right tech talent overseas. How did you find your technical co-founder? How did you guys then recruit overseas? What platform did you use to find talent?
Yes. So great questions. My co-founder is a long-term friend. So we've probably for the last 10 years, we were actually companions as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints about 10 years ago. So we've known each other.
Where'd you go on your mission?
Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, awesome. All right.
Yeah. So we've known each other for a long time, and he, in the last 5 years had become a developer. And so he was the first person I thought of when I thought, hey, I think we've got an opportunity here. Let's see what we can do. And he was able to build the first version and off to the races. And then when we, started looking to hire, we used a site, I believe, called it's exclusive to finding workers in the Philippines. I think it's like .ph hire or something.
Online job.
You got it.
.ph. Yeah.
You got it. That's the one. Yeah.
Okay.
So we used that one, but then we also used Upwork because I was really wanting to find, I had heard that different countries have different talent for whatever reason. Sometimes some countries tend to produce better back-end developers or front-end developers. And from what I found, the Philippines is fantastic for design. So UX, front-end, they really excel there. Pakistan and India tends to have really good back-end, more logical thinkers. And so I put an ad on Upwork. I knew Upwork was generally going to be higher, but we were able to find some very affordable, fantastic developers. And the challenge is you get hundreds of applications. And so it's like, I don't have time to go through all these. How do I vet them? So we use this tool called Gorilla Hire, I believe. And that allowed us to create a custom tailored test in the coding language that we wanted. And I just sent that to everybody. I said, hey, your profile looks great. We'd love to get, see how you perform on this test. And so then we could actually get some quantifiable results. To narrow it down, we got, maybe 15 that we felt could fit the profile. And then we interviewed them all. And after about 2 to 3 weeks, we found them and they've been great.
There you have it, folks. There's a blueprint for you of how to go find and build a little tech team to get your startup and your creative technical idea off the ground that you may not have the chops for. That's okay. You don't have to be a programmer in order to start an app company. It's something that you can find the talent, but you got to be creative a little bit and then do a good job of vetting that talent. So Jared, great example for us there. Thank you so much for that. So you had a business before Apruv, and was that your first startup? Like, how did you fall into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So I would say like I've always been an entrepreneur at heart my entire life. And I don't know if that's because my dad was a professor of entrepreneurship and it's always just been instilled in me. But I mean, I was the kid doing lemonade stands, selling candy to college students, knocking on the dorm doors, trying to sell candy at recess when I wasn't supposed to kids, selling rocks to my neighbors. Like it's just a pattern of trying to be an entrepreneur my entire life. And I think, when I got to college, I was in the mindset of like the big sexy ideas, like, Uber, or like trying to tackle something that was just way beyond me. So I did lots of business plan competitions and we did great. Like the ideas sounded awesome. We would place second, third, first, but they weren't ideas that I could actually like really execute on well. And so I ended up going into the corporate world and I spent about 4 years at 3M in product marketing, which was actually a great experience. I don't regret that at all. And then I did an MBA, and that's when I decided to just jump into entrepreneurship. So I started a couple of different things. I tried an online Amazon product, so FBA, and that was moderately successful. I was able to sell that company for $5,000. Just a small little, just a teeny exit, kind of a fun, like, yeah, I did it. I was able to sell all my inventory. I sold the business, and I sold that on Flippa, if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
It's a site to just flip online businesses. And then from there, I stumbled into kind of this licensing agreement where you could basically take this business model for selling wedding photography and videography. You hire the contractors, they give you the blueprint for marketing and sales, and then you outsource all that work. And I did that for like a year. It was a pretty successful business, but that's how I got into Market Surge, because we were having such a hard time managing lead flow. And Market Surge is built on a white label platform called Go High Level, which has become quite popular for a lot of small business over the last like 2 to 3 years. It's kind of the ClickFunnels competitor. So a lot of people in the marketing world know these two platforms. And I was pretty early with Go High Level, and you can white label it, put your brand on it. And I started selling that to photography companies all across the United States and grew that to about 400 ARR, annual recurring revenue. And then I sold it to one of my affiliate partners who was sending me tons of referrals. So, and that's also how I discovered the opportunity for Apruv. I had a company, a pest control company that was on the platform. We had a few random companies like that, and they were talking about some different tools and things they wanted on the backside of sales, so customer retention type. And I thought, wow, what a cool opportunity where I can actually build the code and really build a business that could sell at a high multiple sometime down the road. And
let's talk about your business that you had before Apruv and selling it. You mentioned, well, remind me the name of it, Jared.
Market Surge.
Market Surge. So you mentioned with Market Surge that you sold it to someone you were already connected with. Who is that connection?
Yeah. So the connection was an affiliate partner. So one of the ways I grew Market Surge was through partnerships. So I would find someone, it's commonly referred to as like finding your dream 100, right? Finding someone who's got your dream audience. So I found someone who was a coach who had a lot of photography studios that they were already training, and they built Market Surge into their program. And so it was just a really easy referral where we were getting tons of signups from them. And I actually was planning to sell the business on a site called acquire.com, or formerly known as MicroAcquire. And I actually was almost about to pull the trigger on a couple of buyers. And then I approached my referral partner and I said, hey, are you interested in throwing your hat in the ring? And they were. And so we ended up going down that route. They were a much better fit.
Cool. So no need for like an investment banker. Did you hire an attorney to help with the process of selling?
Acquire.com provided a lot of that. So they were kind of like my advisor, and they give you templates for those type of documents, and made it super affordable to go through like an M&A, mergers acquisition process without having to hire like really expensive attorneys and things like that.
I think at the right size of business, that's the right move. Depending on the size of the acquisition, I highly recommend that you find out for yourself what's right. If it's a certain stage of business, there's not a lot of team members, there's not a lot of intellectual property to hand off, then you can probably get away without a lot of additional attorney help and investment banker help. If you have a lot of employees, if you've gained a lot of IP and you are in a position where the business is going to sell for tens of millions of dollars, I don't recommend that you do it on your own with boilerplate documents. So that good for you though. That's the right thing to do for your stage, and it's worked out, right? So did you take like a one-time check? Do you still have some ownership? How did that look?
Yeah, so we did like a large upfront payment, and then there was some seller financing baked into that as well, and then with a little bit of a long tail transition period. So
all right, cool. And are you all through that now?
Yeah, we're mostly all through that, and I think the new owner is a fantastic fit, really sharp individual, and I'm excited to see where they end up taking things.
Cool. How long has it been now since that acquisition?
April 2024, so not too long ago.
Okay, congrats on that deal then. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
How did they fund it themselves? Did they already come from money, have an investor, invest? Like, did they work with some sort of bank that finances growth capital? What'd they do?
Yeah. So for the initial payment, it was all funded through themselves. So they've been pretty successful in their own endeavors with other businesses that they've had. So it was, at the time, a pretty good fit for what they were working on. And I think they didn't, since they didn't have to do like an SBA loan or something like that, it made the process way more simple.
Was that the dream for Market Surge? Was the goal to sell it?
It was, yeah. From the very conception, I knew this was a business that I wanted to build and eventually sell. And I think I kind of have that mentality with everything that I start, is that to me, that's kind of the finish line. And I kind of view myself as like more of an early stage founder. Like, I enjoy the process of ideating an idea, bringing it to life, and taking it down, the first 100, 200, 300 customers. And to me, that's where I like to live.
Good that you know that about yourself, right?
Yeah. And I'd say there's like different expertise, right? Like some people excel at that phase and other people excel at the later phase. Finding
that balance is hard to know. Like, when's the right time for me to get out, or should I keep going? The payday gets bigger the longer I hold, if it's all still high growth. But how long before my holding slows the business down from getting where it could go with or without me later? Yeah, there's a lot of questions to ask yourself. How did you know for sure it was the right time for Market Surge?
I think a lot because of Apruv. So I was building both at the same time, and it was getting to the point where I did not want to see Market Surge start declining because I wasn't able to devote my time to it like I could before. And to me, I was more excited about the potential and growth of Apruv, and being that we could build whatever we wanted since it was we owned all the code. I think that was one of the challenges. There's pros and cons of building on a white label operating system. One of the cons is you can't just change whatever you want super easily. And so I liked the idea of being able to, based off of customer feedback, we could change whatever we wanted. And so I saw that as this is the right time to make the jump and build something that we can change however we like.
So it sounds like you had with Apruv, you kind of found the idea, found a first customer, and you're making money off of Market Surge to help kind of self-finance. Was it all self-financed up to now? Is that how you've done it so far?
Yeah, exactly. We've been super lean with the company. So like we both put in I put in about 10,000. My co-founder put in, anywhere between 5 and 8. At the beginning, it was just writing checks every month to whatever, like the bare necessities of what we needed to just get this done. And then once it started cash flowing, we've paid ourselves back and made some, and we've invested most of it back in to the business now with the development team that we've hired. So we've self-funded the whole thing mostly through the business revenues.
I love your story. I love your stage. I love that you've kind of been there and done it a couple times with smaller things. And now you're ready to go bigger and dream bigger here. In college, I had the Christmas light guys which was installing Christmas lights for people, right? And picking them up.
Yeah.
But before I did that, I took a class from Jared's father, Mark Nygren, and loved the experience of getting to learn from him. I sold my first thing I ever sold online as extra credit in his class. And that tells you how old I am. Like it was like a challenge to sell something online back then. I put a sleeping bag for sale on eBay. And so anyway, that was my first interaction with the Nygren family. And then after I had that entrepreneurship class from Mark, I started that little Christmas light business. I graduate college, start getfoundfirst.com. It's a service-based business. I kept it. I started StuKent. I came up with the idea and started StuKent and ran StuKent for 2 years. And then I saw that StuKent was going to go to the moon. And I saw that I hated the headaches that occasionally would come up with Get Found First. So I sold Get Found First to go all in on StuKent. So similar stories, Jared. So
that's cool.
I share that because I think that's kind of how we got here today. Is I'm a little bit ahead of you in terms of the career path is all.
Yeah.
You're headed where I've been, just a few years younger than me. And so, when you reached out to me, it was kind of like, hey, my dad mentioned that you're someone I might want to talk to. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I was like, wait, let's use the show. Cause I love when I can help you. And in turn, listeners can get more out of it as well. I hope listeners, by the way, you should, if you have been taking notes and written down, acquire.com, flippa.com, upwork.com, onlinejobs.ph. He's given you some gold nuggets here. And also that playbook of how to go and recruit talent is just awesome to have. So be sure to use that. But Jared, what questions do you have for me? Like, what are the challenges you're going through right now as you grow Apruv?
Yes. Okay. So I think the biggest challenge that's kind of unexpected. I plan to bootstrap the entire way. And I still think we might do that, but we're at a little bit of a crossroads. My co-founder is not full-time, so he's still working a full-time job. And that's difficult, right? Because I want to move fast. I'm all in. So I want to see this thing, be cranking things out tomorrow. But I have to be respectful of his time and where he's at. And I think hiring the development team was helpful. But I'm at a point where I see for the first time why funding really can help. And so I think we're starting to explore, do we go down that route? And what's challenging about that is, like, I think sometimes people approach a business market opportunity from the top down. They look at it, okay, there's this huge market. How do we pare this down to an idea and then go after it? We kind of started from the bottom up, where we had someone say, hey, could you build this? I'll pay for it right now. And we did it, and we said, I bet someone else will buy this. And now we got to figure out, how big is this opportunity? Because that's what investors want to know. And especially VCs, they want to see $1 billion plus TAM. And I'm thinking, how can I get there in a way that I actually believe? And I think that's been pretty challenging for me. So I feel like we're at this point where I would prefer to just continue to bootstrap, but I know that we could do a lot more with an investor that could at least get my co-founder full time, and we could move more efficiently. And I don't know if we're, a VC funded type company, that would become $1 billion company. I don't know. We might be a smaller angel investor type company, and we have a great exit in 5-10 years. I'm not sure yet.
Okay, I love this scenario. This is a classic stage for a lot of founders. Jared, I was just earlier today the guest on a podcast that is called Practical Founders with Greg Head. And I highly recommend you go check this podcast out. He likes to talk about the founders that take a small amount of upfront capital, whether it be their own or investor money, and then they try to bootstrap from there and grow into a reasonably successful business rather than do or die to the moon, VC-backed mega growth business. As a founder, you have to ask yourself what you're willing to give up and whether or not this has to be the payday win for you or not. The practical founder mentality that Greg is always talking about is that you want to put a goalpost out there that's one you're going to be excited about and then aim there and get there because you know you can, versus taking on investor money where they set the goalpost for you at that $1 billion or bust place. And the reason he had me on the show is he goes, "Oh, Stu, you are definitely in my category. Like, you're a success story of someone in the category. So you may take 20% one time and 20% another time at a higher valuation from 2 VC seed and Series A. And that may be all you need. And it grows to $1 billion and you get 60% of $1 billion. And it's like this mega $600 million payday and it all works, right? Or you could be like the other 7 or 8 out of the 10 that did the same thing with that same VC, with those same VCs that go to zero. They'll put stipulations in place where you no longer get to make the decisions about whether it goes to zero or not. You can't say, hey, well, this is still going to be good at 20 or 30 and take your exit as easily, right? Like, that gets hard for you to get anything back out if you took those 2 rounds from the high dollar, high bet VC approach. Now, it's not to say that it's wrong. It's the only way for some businesses, the right way for a lot of businesses, but the majority don't actually do that, but they don't get the attention from Entrepreneur and Inc. magazine. The practical founder is probably more recognized in Inc. magazine, and the VC founder is more recognized in Entrepreneur magazine. It's funny because in that same magazine, there's a whole back section for like franchisees and buying a small business. But anything that makes article stage in Entrepreneur is like they raised 20 million in Series B or 50 million in Series B. And if you do that, you don't get a sell until it's $1 billion business. And you have no choice but to wait until it does that and to stick around until it does that. And you have to have the staying power and you have to grow with it. You have to meet the demands of the board. And if you don't do those things, they'll fire you. They'll get you out of there and then you lose, right? So there's a lot of things to think about as you decide whether to take any money, whether to take some money. In Stu Kent's case, we took 250 grand, then we took 350 grand, then we took like another 200 grand in 3 small seed stage rounds of funding. That was 2013 and 14, then 2015, then 2016, those 3 rounds. And after that, just could live off of and reinvest off of the growth of the business. We didn't have to raise any money, just retained earnings every year on the books. And we grew from 2016 to 2021 without any investor money. And private equity groups were like pushing down my door to get in on the business. And at that point, we hired an investment bank. So we just needed that initial burst of money to get things going. Some investors don't like the idea. Angels will kind of cringe at the idea of it's just paying the co-founder to get started money. It's like, we don't want to cover his salary. If he can't take the risk and do this without that, then maybe it's not the right thing for him. That's something that for you and him to kind of keep working through is like, okay, And by the way, maybe you guys already have you guys talked about like percentage and ownership that way?
We have. We just
What's
did
the split look like?
We just did a 50-50 split. And let me tell you a little bit why I made that decision. I think in all the little entrepreneurial things I've done over the years, it's always been something that like, well, how do we do this split? Like we want to do this together, but how do we split this? And there's a book called like Slicing Pie, and it goes through a very complex way to break down how to do equity split in a startup where everyone's tracking their time, they're tracking their money, and things are valued differently. And then it gives you like a pie split. And what I've found is like, it's always going to feel a little unfair no matter what. But if you can find someone who believes in a common vision, getting to a common end, and it's okay that, yeah, maybe you're working harder right now, but I'm going to be working harder next time, and things ebb and flow. Like I would even say, even though he's not full time, there's been times where he was working way harder than I was trying to get the product built, staying up all night, just burning the midnight oil to make this happen. He was putting in more hours than me. And then there's times when it's flipped. I'm working on the marketing and sales side. I'm doing way more than him. And you have to be okay with it being unfair, in my opinion, to make the relationship work and to make the business be successful. And so that was my thought on it. We're going to split 50-50. We're going to go win together.
Okay. Taking a quick break from the episode. Sorry to interrupt, but I have to take a second and thank the great team at Pod Allies that helps me produce this podcast. Startups with Stu is not an easy undertaking. It takes a lot of work and team power to get this thing done. So the team I use for my podcast, podallies.com, go check them out. If you are considering a podcast, if you've thought you have a dream for a show and you want to go make it happen, go to podallies.com and book a strategy call today. I promise you won't regret it. Speaking of the show or shows, let's get back to Startups with Stu in this episode. Forgive my interruption, but if you're interested, go check out podallies.com. What did you use to legally agree to the terms?
Okay, so this is interesting. So we started with just like an LLC. We created like the like an operating agreement, that kind of thing. Then when we started looking at, okay, I think we might need a raise. We found a mentor who he had helped my co-founder's cousin raise for a company called Carketa, which is a software company in Utah. And he had suggested like, hey, if you guys really want to do this, you need to be a C Corp registered out of Delaware. You got to look the looks. So we did all that. We switched over the agreement. We got all these fancy template documents that for all the official stuff, we got it all lined out the best we could. And, the number of shares and how we're splitting all that. And I'd say we're like at the tail end of that process. So like the legal stuff, we still probably got to button up and tighten down a little bit further, but yeah, that's kind of a long tail answer to that question. But
yeah, well, I think the advice I would have for you, Jared, is you mean business, right? You are going to take like hell or high water. You're going for it here. You're going to find a way to make this work. Right.
Yeah.
And you already have proven you've got a product and customers and that you can, that people need this and want it. Right. And that you can go get more. So where that's the case, an investment to protect your future success is worthwhile. Because the future success, you believe in it. You're going to go get it, right?
Yes.
So I recommend that you find a good startup attorney in the area. KB&A is affordable and one that's good in your neck of the woods in the Silicon Slopes area.
Yeah.
I can introduce you to them later if you want, by the way. But a good attorney that can help is powerful. If you become a Delaware C, that means business. It means investors are going to take you more serious. You can be, by the way, a Delaware C. I think they say that both Colorado and Wyoming are also really good now too, and friendly with startups that are raising money. So by friendly for startups that are raising money, that also means investor friendly. Investors like to invest in those types of entities that later can be very great tax implications that are on the side of the investor and all shareholders involved. So including the founders. So good things to think about and have done. And then So today, who wears what hats? This is another piece of advice I'd have for you, is around really making sure these things are in stone.
Yeah. So I think the nice thing about our partnership is we have very, very different skill sets. Like Austin's the tech whiz. He's a brilliant dude. He's great at all that stuff. I'm the marketing and sales guy. And I think that's like been our soft line. I'm also over product and the vision. But I also am a firm believer in 100% accountability. And so like if something's not working, I don't like just saying, hey, that's on the dev side. You guys got to figure it out. Cause I believe like, if you want to make it happen, you got to be a part of it. If you see a problem, you got to jump in, you got to jump on it. So I think we do crossover on different things, and we all wear all the hats at different times. But I would say that's our line: is he's CTO, I'm CEO.
Okay, gotcha. So, what will it take? When will he be ready to jump in and go all in?
Yeah, I mean, I think at heart he's been there for months. I think from a financial standpoint, he just can't do it. One of the challenges we have with where we're at is we have some seasonality in our revenue. And so, it makes it a little bit challenging at this point, probably impossible to do it right this minute. But I think we're trying to work as quickly as we can to do it ourselves, or bring on a little bit of an investment to help us get there as soon as we can.
That is a big reason. I never knew the fundraising game, had no intention to take a bunch of money from people and then have to pay them back. Like, that scared me to death.
Yeah.
But when you are in the education space, there's seasonality, right? So you make money in January and you make money in September.
Yep.
And if you have to make payroll in April, May, June, and July and August before September hits again, like, you really need some funding to carry you. We would talk to a professor in November. They'd say, yeah, next September, I'll send students to your website to make the purchase, right? So we knew the money would come because the professors would commit, but then it would be a long time before we get the payment. So we needed some seed money to then get to a place where the revenues during the good season would last all the way through to the next good season.
Yes.
And so we did it. We ended up raising money, and in raising money, for me personally, Jared, what that did was it set me off on this tear of like, I am going to find a way to get a return for you. Like, if you trusted me with your money, I'm going to find a way to bring you a good return. If you invested 25 grand in Stu Kent, you walked away with just shy of $1 million check 8 years later. And awesome. to do that for people, to bring that kind of reward for people was, I never was sad or mad that, oh my gosh, they only gave me 25 and they get that. Like, that's what I needed to get going. And they were there for me when I needed them. And so to be able to see them get that reward when I had my big payday, dude, it was so worth it. Raising friends and family money, a seed round. By the way, I recommend the distant friends, no real friends and family, just because of the risk that it is. I know that my dad's mentioned, man, I should have invested in Stu Kent, but I'm glad that I got to sleep better during the years I was growing the business, with knowing that I didn't owe my dad anything if this didn't work out, right? And so, and by the way, you don't owe anyone anything when you take equity and when you give up equity in exchange for investment, right? Because if it goes to zero, that's the risk they're taking. And I just felt this internal, personal, ethical obligation that I would never take their money if I didn't think they were going to get some return. So
what do you think about a safe, simple agreement for future equity? I know that's become a really popular way. I hadn't even heard of it until we started seriously considering fundraising. How familiar are you with that kind of vehicle for early fundraising?
Safe notes are talked about a lot right now. I am and convertible notes are another common way to take money from investors up front. I mean, I think that's the idea of it, is it's a simple agreement. It makes it fast, makes it easy. The idea of a safe is really for future investments. When you're going to take on even more money and you're going to then come to agreement on exact terms with the new, bigger, more sophisticated investor later.
Yeah.
I personally don't have experience doing safe notes. I just simply sold shares.
Yeah.
And they purchased shares right up front. That's how we did our whole thing. So I don't think it's wrong. I think it's worth studying and getting legal counsel for your needs on that. But my suggestion is just do it the old fashioned way and create a stock purchase agreement and sell shares, and then get to a place where always be focused on what you're doing to not have to raise more money and give up more equity. So in Jared's case, you guys, when Jared is a 50-50 partner, if he gives up 10% of the business, he'll now own 45 and his partner will own 45, and the new investor will own 10, or investors will own 10. And so you want to hold on to as much of the business as you can, because let's say you get to where each of you have given up 30%. Now you each own 20%, right? Okay, how much does the business have to sell for now for you to be glad and happy with a payday of a company where you get a 20% cut of it and have to pay taxes, right? So let's say it sells for $10 million. You're going to get $2 million out of that business that you grew to 10 million, right?
Yep.
And so is that enough? Are you happy there? Is that when the payday will happen? Or are you saying, or are you really, in giving up that equity, saying, no, the field goal posts are now at 30 million because I don't want to sell until my 20% equals whatever 20%, $6 million, right? So
Right.
30 million. So yeah, I think that's how you should be thinking about it, is like,
Okay.
I think that's the right way to think about it.
So when it comes to the legal side of things, you've recommended we should connect with someone now, get things kind of dialed in a little bit better. I'd say that's one of the hardest things I have, like, wanting to spend money on, because I feel like, man, we're barely making it, right? We got dev costs. We got to make more sales. We need to get to conferences. And how do you view that? And what would you recommend in terms of, like, yeah, that's probably too much, or this is probably what you should plan to spend, and it's really important that you spend that now?
Yeah, good question. Do you have a full-time finance guy? Are you doing the finances?
We do have, like, an accounting firm that does, like, our taxes and does our bookkeeping.
Okay. Are they a specialized firm, as like an outsourced CFO firm?
No, not really. It is like a relative connection. So, like, we probably get a few extra bones in terms of, like, their services that they provide, and they do a good job, but wouldn't be like a CFO type of agreement.
Yeah. I think that for Stu Camp, I just fell into this luckily, but one of my investors was an outsourced CFO. So he had 4 other startup investments. I was his 5th. And so he did all of the CFO work for all 5 of his startups.
Oh, wow.
And he was anxiously engaged in all of them winning. And so he wanted to do his best. One of the things that's so great about someone who's always got skin in the game and involved as a financial officer is they're going to help you with calculating your run rate, your burn rate. They're going to help you understand how much runway you have before things don't work out. They'll help you decide what we expect it's going to cost us to acquire our customers, how much money we're going to make per this type of customer and that type of customer. And then they can constantly be rethinking that with you and repricing things with you. And they can help you calculate, like, what you really need to spend. And the reason I bring that up is because they can help you say, like, let's just put a line item in here for $2,000 a month for legal counsel, right?
Yeah.
And at $200 an hour, that's going to get you 10 hours a month. Dude, on 10 hours a month for a startup, that should get you everything you need help-wise, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And that's 24 grand a year. We did it for less than that. My CFO and I, between the two of us, would review contracts and only go to the attorney for help with the contract where we thought, oh, this might be out of our pay grade, right? And
Yeah.
so we'd get that help. But when it came to creating the stock purchase agreement, we paid them to create it. Then once they created it, they stepped aside and Mike and I made adjustments. Mike's the CFO. We made adjustments to each specific stock purchase agreement for each investor, because all it was changing how many shares, and we knew the price per share. And so we could just fill in the blanks and basically do what you've done already, Jared, in your career, which is take a boilerplate, make it your own. And so, I recommend that you do spend enough upfront to be dangerous, right? And then stop. And you're right. You're thinking about it the right way when you say, I need to go and spend my money on conferences, on developers. Like, that's where I need to be spending my money. And you're right. That is where your money needs to go. Anything growth related, spend it there.
I need to get to know the type of people, it sounds like.
Yeah, I do have a couple introductions I could probably help make in that regard. So
yeah, cool. Okay. No, that's helpful. That's super helpful.
As it relates to raising funding, finding a couple of angel investors that can give you some runway to go and just focus on sales is really powerful. If your co-founder can't get to a place where even with the angel money, they can't quit, you got to ask yourself, like, how long before you're both full-time on this for it to still be fair that it's 50-50?
Yeah.
And I think a good co-founder that is reasonable will renegotiate that easily with you. Should it come to a place where it feels like the right thing today, it still feels good. 50-50, let's do it. Move forward. You got the contract in place. Great. You're golden. Don't change that just because you want more, but do it based on the true fairness of it all. Eventually, if you don't, later you'll regret it, I think.
Don't want to build up any sort of hard feelings over time if it definitely feels imbalanced for a long, long time. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll know. And I like the way you're thinking about it. And I appreciate that you shared that.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question I had for you, when it comes to, like, I assume you were similar to me in the sense that you were like the marketing sales guy, the champion of the product. You saw the vision, you drove it that way. What did you find effective, and what do you see that's effective today in terms of like getting in front of your ICP, right? Your ideal client profile. Like, to me, like, I'll just tell you what we've done. And it's been cold emailing and cold LinkedIn, which is probably the spammiest way to get to people, but it's worked. I mean, we found our early customers, and I think we want to mature that and get better at finding our targets. But I'd be curious what your thoughts are on that. We're at a scrappy level. We don't have a ton of money, and we want to grow. We gotta move the needle,
Yeah. One of the things that was great with StuCamp when we raised money was all of a sudden we could be a platinum sponsor at a conference and gain so much attention so fast. And we had done the cold emails and it worked. And you do need to do that to gain traction. Don't be above cold emails and cold calling. Like, it's just simply a part of how anyone that was successful got to where they are. They were willing to go where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And it's not pretty sometimes. You just got to do it. But it's not, people don't just come to you and say, wow, thank you for building that thing that you didn't tell us about. Can we pay you for it? Like, it just doesn't work that way, right? So you've got to go and hustle. And Jared, I commend you for doing that. What I would say is find the places where they go and go be there.
Yeah. Okay.
Find where they go and be there. For us, there's professor conferences, professor directories on websites. Like, we had good ways to quickly get in front of our audience. There's online communities for marketing professors. We would go and participate there as best and as well as we could. And then once we had an audience, we would go and create value for those audiences, right? So like we didn't just go to the American Marketing Association. We actually got good speakers to come and be a part of our sessions so that it wasn't like, hey, come hear us, our sales pitch. It was, hey, come and hear Jeff Larson. He's amazing. He's published this research and you can get to hear about his research, right? And then we were a byproduct of that. We were like a side thought of that. And it just leaded to one more way we were hitting them. And we would hit them as many different ways as we could. If they visited our website, they were going to keep seeing ads through our retargeting and remarketing efforts on our Google ads and social ads and via email. They were going to still keep hearing from us because we'd have a different good excuse to reach out to them. How often should you send an email, Stu? I'll tell you guys, every time that you can add value, you can send an email. Send 3 a day if you've got something new that's cool for them.
Yeah.
I have people that hit my inbox 3 times a day. They're team members of this startup I invested in called PodUp. And the reason they sent me 3 emails is because they have 3 legitimate reasons to talk to me. And so if you can create legitimate reasons to talk to your potential customers, go create that content. And then you get to talk to them more frequently. And they welcome it. They're not mad about it.
Yeah. I love that.
I think that podcasting, by the way, is a phenomenal way to get in front of potential customers. So, hey, I've created a podcast about summer sales. Where we're talking about what it takes to grow a summer sales business. And we're interviewing sales reps. We're interviewing people that ran the tech teams and hearing their stories. We're interviewing founders, and you invite them onto the show. And in having them on the show, they become your friend. Like Jared, if you want to call me up next time you're in Idaho Falls and say, hey, Stu, I'd love to go to lunch. Okay, cool. We hung out on a podcast once, right? So the networking that can come from podcasting is as good, if not better, than the number of listens and likes and shares and comments and reviews you get off of a podcast. The content's great for your social media. It helps there, but the networking, Jared, is huge.
That's a gem. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. I'm going to have to, it's always like there's so many cool things to do. That's one that should probably fit in the list. That's cool. I like that idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's why I'm doing it, right? Like I have to be very picky now about which investments are right for me from a startup portfolio perspective. Frankly, Jared, out the gate, I was too bleeding heart in love with the entrepreneur that's just trying. I want to help them. So I'll give them some money to get started.
Yeah.
And I've learned that I have to be more careful about the right startups that really have what it takes and spend time with the jockeys to understand whether they can ride the horse, and spending time on podcasts with people like you allows me to like get a gut check on, okay, is this a founder that needs some angel money, that needs my kind of angel money? Am I the right mentor for them if I give them my money? And all those things come from the podcast as well for me, right? So there's a lot of different reasons to have a podcast. And if you're thinking about it the right way, listens, likes, shares, how much sponsorship and ad revenue you can make off of it, I think those are like way down the list of the reasons to have a podcast.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Didn't think of it that way, but that's makes a lot of sense.
Well, hey, it's so good to have you with me today. Thank you so much for what you're doing and your bravery as an entrepreneur. If you have other questions for me, feel free to text me, hit me up on Gmail, and I'll give you additional thoughts and advice. If you want me to review your pitch deck, I could do that. If people want to learn more about your CRM for pest control, if I'm summarizing that right, Apruv.io is the website. Is that right?
Yes. Apruv.io. We had to follow the trend of making a misspelling on the tech name, right?
I like it. Apruv.io. Go check it out, folks. You can follow Jared on LinkedIn as well. Look up Jared Nygren there. Thank you so much, Jared.
Yeah. Thanks, Stu.
Hey, founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and other listeners of Startups with Stu. Thank you for listening to this episode today. As I mentioned at the beginning, as I mentioned in the middle, I want to take a second again at the end and say, if you haven't yet and you're considering a podcast, go check out podallies.com. They sure help me a lot with the show. And I am so grateful for all that they do to help me accomplish Startups with Stu and get it out to the world so we can help more founders and take your startup to the moon. Go check out podallies.com and podup.com if you're interested in podcasting at any level.
Thanks for joining me on Startups with Stu. We have big goals to help millions of entrepreneurs. If you enjoyed this show, please take a minute to share it with someone else that needs to hear it, or leave a review. Remember, success is within reach for those who dare to dream big and take action. Until next time, keep pushing forward on your entrepreneurial journey.